Hi everyone, David Aragona here with Craig Milkowski, and we are taking a look at one of two graded stakes events at Woodbine on Saturday. It is race 7, the Grade 3 Maple Leaf, going a demanding mile-and-a-quarter distance for the fillies and mares on the Tapeta surface. And Craig, it's a really wide open field of 10 horses. We've got some local Woodbine runners that are proven over the synthetic surface there, but maybe are not proven at the 10 furlongs. We've also got some US-based horses that have primarily raced on the turf who'll be moving up to Woodbine to try the synthetic surface there.
Yeah, it's quite the interesting matchup. You get some of this at the end of the year as horses ship around. We're kind of getting toward the end of the Woodbine meet. So good, solid field. And I think there's a lot of different directions you could go in this spot.
Yeah, I would not want to be the morning line maker in this race. I think you could have gone a lot of different ways. I'm not really sure how they're going to bet this race. I know they've got 3 horses around the same price, all vying for favoritism. But one thing I do know, Craig, is that Mark Casse is going to have a big say in the outcome here, because in addition to having 4 of the 10 entrants in this race, his 4 runners all have some modicum of tactical speed. So as we look at the Time Form US pace projector, I think that Mark Casse is going to be able to decide how fast or slow the pace is in this race.
Yeah, and the pace is so tough to predict. This is probably one of the weakest spots for the pace projector on a Tapeta surface, going a distance of 10 furlongs. Not a lot of true front runners in here. So for me, this is a pretty muddled pace scenario.
Speaking of those Mark Casse runners, let's take a look at a few of them in action in last month's Ontario Matron, a prep for this race at Woodbine. And Craig, in this one, Art of Almost causes quite the upset as she overtakes Skygaze, who was bet down to heavy favoritism here. Both of these runners trained by Mark Casse, with Crystal Glacier a little farther back in 4th place. But Art of Almost puts in a pretty nice stretch run here to get the job done.
Yeah, I thought it was a good run, particularly since we have all the fractions coded in blue saying it was a slow pace. And it was kind of an odd situation because Art of Almost had been getting bet pretty heavily in all her starts, while, disappointing the time before when she was 4th behind Skygaze and Crystal Glacier in the Bell Mahone Stakes. But she got the job done, seemed to put it all together, and I really liked what I saw from her.
Yeah, we'll see what she does stretching out to the mile-and-a-quarter, as all of these Woodbine contenders really have not raced over this distance that much. She actually was 2nd in last year's edition of the Maple Leaf, so she is one who has tried this distance before. We'll see how the pace translates here, Craig, because it seems like at Woodbine, watching a lot of the races there, the riders are often reluctant to be aggressive at all because horses do generally tend to do well from off the pace. So we'll see if she gets a similar kind of setup here, but she did at least prove that she could overcome a slow pace last time. What do we make of the horse that she defeated last time, Craig, Skygaze, who was the heavy favorite in that Ontario Matron? Because Skygaze was a pretty impressive winner of the Bell Mahone 2-back, and she had things mostly her own way last time, stalking that slow pace, just couldn't quite seal the deal.
Yeah, it was definitely a regression. She had run a 108 the time before when she won that stakes race I was talking about, and just didn't quite have that same kick. I'm wondering if maybe the trip didn't get to her. She was up close like she normally is, but she was wide around the turns, kind of got shuffled a little bit early in the race. So I guess you could give it a little bit of a pass, but at a horse who's going to be a short price, I don't know how much of a pass. It will probably come down to the tote for me.
Yeah, and she's one of many in here among the Mark Casse trainees that I'm a little bit unsure about her stretching out to get the mile-and-a-quarter distance from a pedigree standpoint, and looking at her physically, I'm just not sure if a mile-and-a-quarter is what she really wants to do. I don't think she's ever gone farther than a 1.16 in her career. Craig, another Mark Casse trainee that could take some money is the number 7 Broadway Lady. And let's take a look at her allowance victory last time, actually on the turf. This was a pretty visually impressive performance, though. She was stalking what was a moderate to slow pace, but she really just slams the door on this field when they got into the stretch.
Yeah, we've talked about this on shows before. You don't often see turf races won as easily as she did, winning by nearly 6 lengths. Did pass a few horses in there. She got a big 1:15 Time Form US speed figure. I guess the real question with her is, can she transfer from dirt to the Tapeta surface? I know it's a common belief that that's an easy thing to do, but for me, it's one of those, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. All the horses are a little bit different, and some handle it and some don't.
Yeah, that's the big question mark for her because that 115 time form US speed figure, I believe that's the highest last out number in this field. It just is a matter of whether or not she's going to transfer that turf number to the synthetic. She does have a pretty versatile pedigree being by constitution, but it's easier said than done to make that move from turf to synthetic. And she's another one that I'm not really sure a mile and a quarter is what she's crying out to do. So we'll see if she gets the distance as well. Craig, we do want to talk about the horse down on the inside, who I thought was somewhat surprisingly listed as the morning line favorite here. That's Merveilleux. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but I'll do my best. She's got a tough one to get out of the mouth. But Craig, this filly ran pretty well in her race 3 back in the Dance Smartly. And let's take a look at that performance because she's running against some pretty good open company turf horses, and she gets within 3/4 of a length of the very good Christophe Clement runner, Muda Makina.
Yeah, I thought she ran very well that day. I think you can certainly give her an excuse for the last time out in the EP Taylor. She was badly beaten that day, but it was grade 1 company. It was over a very yielding course, which I imagine she didn't handle well at all. So if you put a line through that race, she's got to be a contender in this spot, drawing the good inside post position.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm just going to draw a line through that last race over that boggy course. I mean, she was upwards of 50-1 that day anyway, so she wasn't really expected to do well. Her prior turf form was pretty good, and you might see at the bottom of the PP is that she lost a synthetic race, the Trillium, back in June. Remember, Woodbine had some issues getting back to the races earlier this year. I think a lot of horses maybe didn't deliver their best efforts at the beginning of the summer, so I'd be willing to give her a pass for that race off the layoff because this filly had run really well on the synthetic Tapeta course last year. She was actually one of the choices going into the Queen's Plate. Didn't do that well in that race with a less than ideal trip, but she's handled a mile and a quarter before, and I think she makes a lot of sense getting back on the Tapeta in this spot. Craig, though, those are the Woodbine contenders. We do have to talk about some of the U.S.-based runners that are shipping up north, and one of those is the number 4, Sister O'Toole, and she's coming out of a decent effort last time in the Weah, definitely against a tougher field because My Sister Nat came out of this race to be second at a big price in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, and last weekend at Belmont, we saw Orglande, the second-place finisher, come back to win a stakes.
Yeah, it's been a strong race. As you note, My Sister Nat darn near won that Filly and Mare Turf. She was right there at the wire. Again, with her, the big question is, will she handle the Tapeta? She hasn't been on it yet. Her debut was on dirt where she ran okay, and she's been on turf ever since. So once again, it's a question. She does offer a little more value on the morning line than Broadway Lady does. And her speed figures on turf certainly fit in this field.
Yeah, distance, obviously not a question with this one. She's won over a mile and a quarter, just having done so on the turf. Another U.S.-based runner that'll be shipping up to Canada is the number 10 Lake Lucerne for Brendan Walsh. And let's take a look at her victory 2 back at Saratoga when she just got up on the wire over In a Hurry, a Shug McGahee runner who's really gotten into good form at the end of the year. And I thought Lake Lucerne was pretty game to run her down on this occasion, Craig.
Yeah, this was a big effort. Her speed figure was a little bit, it was good that day. She ran a 114. She kind of regressed next time out. That was going a mile and an eighth. But what I found interesting about her, she actually broke her maiden on a synthetic surface going a mile and a quarter at Chelmsford in England. I'm not sure if that's a Tapeta surface. I'll have to look that up later on. But she's obviously handled it. So I think you got to consider in here. She had some tactical speed. And what we already mentioned was kind of a muddled pace scenario with all the Mark Casse horses. So maybe she's one who could find herself up really close to the front end.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out because among the American contingent in this race, she's one that I do trust the most to handle the Tapeta surface because of that prior all-weather win. And also, she's a daughter of Dubawi, whose progeny just seemed to run on anything. I think his horses win at a 20% rate on synthetic in Europe. And also, her Damn Round Pond was a good dirt horse, so she has influences to really handle any surface. And I'm not going to hold the Athenia against her last time. Pocket Square, just a superior horse to her. She went on to also compete in the Breeders' Cup off that performance. Craig, one more horse that I do want to get your take on is the number 5 La Lune, another horse who's shipping up to Canada from the U.S. This one has some of the highest time formula speed figures in the field in her last couple of starts, but one of those efforts was at Kentucky Downs, and I thought her last effort at Keeneland, despite the 112 time formula speed figure, was just a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, I agree with that. As you can see in the past performances, all the fractions are in red that day. She had plenty of pace to close into, and it just seems like one of those races where she got to suck up 112 time form US speed figure, as opposed to one that was earned in victory or close defeat. So personally, on turf, I'm always a little more leery of those type of figures when the horse wasn't really competitive in the race.
Craig, let's throw up our picks for this race. We landed on different pages in this one, no surprise, because it's such a competitive race. You went for a couple of those Mark Casse runners, particularly the two that are coming out of that Ontario Major, and you're hoping for another slight upset with Art of Almost.
Yeah, I really like what I saw. We put up the graphic for her, and her speed figures, it looked like the 109 was a big jump up, but she actually had some pretty big figures in prior years, both her 3-year-old and 4-year-old season. And for me, I just think she got back into good form last time, and I'm looking forward to hold it. And I think she's going to offer some value among those Mark Casse horses.
And I'm going with the rail-drawn borderline favorite Merveilleux, who I think she might drift up a little bit from that 3-1. I really wasn't sure where they were going to go in this race, but I was a little surprised to see her listed at that short on the morning line. I probably wouldn't have picked her if I thought she was going to be a short price in this race, because she's made 5 starts this year, and she really hasn't gotten that close in any of them. The closest she got was in that Dan Smartly replay that we showed. But I just think she's getting back into the right kind of situation here on the Tapeta surface, going the 1.25 miles, being proven at that distance. So I think she's an interesting horse that could get the right setup in here. So very interesting edition of the Maple Leaf on Saturday at Woodbine. Good luck if you're playing this weekend.